Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Our House 21, and I got something special for you today. Now, my definition of special might be different than your definition of special, but I'm pretty excited about this because I've been building up to this, or I've been alluding to this and hinting about this for a long time now, and shipments have just gotten in, and I am excited. So, first off, let me just go back and, you got to pay to play, so I'm going to make you guys pay a little bit by walking through some math to tell you how I got to where I got to, and then tell you where I'm going. So, all right. So those of you who've been following the channel I've seen for a long time. I've been talking about the fact that, Slade and Dizzy, these guys have had their power systems tweaked up to the yin yang. And I've added the arrow. I've done lots of things internally to try to get the efficiency up so that I can shoot for the high speeds. But I was hitting this wall at 68.x miles an hour. And I changed the gearing around. I did all sorts of stuff, and I wasn't able to push through that limit. And it was bugging the living crap out of me. So I sat down and I did some math, and then I made some phone calls. So I called the good guys at Council Creations and got some interesting information. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, this is Slade. He's a Rustler VXL. Started off as a regular Rustler, got upgraded. And over here, you have Dizzy, who is a actually started off life as a Rally and was upgraded to equivalent of a slash of LCG Platinum without a lot of aluminum parts. And I won't go into my whole feeling on RC aluminum parts. Those of you who have seen the channel for a long time know that, so I'll just leave that alone. But anyway, so the deal is, both of these cars, he's been to 68.x, he's been to about 65. So, and I honestly didn't really push this one as hard as I could have because I usually was running Dizzy at the end of the day, because the main goal was getting him into the 70-mile-an-hour club. And I have one good high-quality 3S pack, that a Gens Ace, and I will usually run through him first and then run him with a Warren pack, because I had higher speed goals, as you can kind of see by that big monster fan sitting there. So anyway, I made some calls to Castle Creations, and both of these cars are running Sidewinder ESCs. You can't really see Dizzy's, but he's buried in here under that massive cooling fan. But here you see Slade's. Slade has a Sidewinder 3, Dizzy Sidewinder SCT. They're both the same speed controller. It's just the Sidewinder SCT comes with a cooling fan built in. The cooling fan wasn't big enough for what I needed, so I got an aftermarket cooling fan that's from higher CFM, put it on here, and that manages the thermal on this pretty well. But I was just hitting that wall, could not get past the 68 miles an hour. So again, I called up Castle and said, what's the deal? And we started walking through those things, and I learned something. There's that old expression, when you assume you make an ass of you and me. Well, I had an assumption that this speed controller, because Castle makes great stuff, that this speed controller was 120 amp speed controller. Turns out it is not. The Sidewinder series, or at least the Sidewinder 3S series of speed controllers, are actually rated for 70 amps. Now that's their nominal average output. They will peak well over 100 amps. So for hard accelerations, as you saw with my battery meter, I could go well over 100 amps. But then the ESC basically applies some resistance and brings down the current draw so that it doesn't overload itself. And sitting down and going through some math, I've realized that 70 amps just isn't going to get it. So consulting the math, so you guys have seen this equation many times. Power is equal to the current times the voltage. We've been over that before. So kind of jumping down here to the chase a little bit, with a 3S configuration, which is roughly 12 volts, and I'm using approximations on the math here, so the numbers are a little rough. These are kind of back of the envelope, but it gets the point across. So at 70 amps, the average power to ESC is about 840-ish watts. So we're talking about just over a horsepower. Okay. Now, my assumption was that I was dealing with about 120 amps continuous, and I had data that I thought confirmed that because I saw transient power or maximum powers of well over 100 amps, but these were just off the hard acceleration. So basically, you got a big spike when it starts to move, and then it pulled off the throttle. And I saw that in run after run where it came on hard and petered out. So I was assuming I was dealing with 120 amps would have given me an average power of about 1400 watts. That's about, just about 2 horsepower. And I figured that would have been enough to get me where I need to go. Nope. So going back up here, well, I mean, still, you think 800 over 840 watts, that's over a horsepower. That should be good to get a rustler to some really good speeds. And yeah, a normal rustler with 840 watts on tap is a bad boy. Slade, as you can see from here, is not your normal rustler. The big difference, of course, is, I'm an aerospace engineer. I wanted to get over the high-speed stability problems with the rustler with some aerodynamic stuff, so I put the spoiler on the front and on the back. These guys are wings. Lift, or I should say downforce, is not free. Downforce comes with a drag penalty. So the front spoiler and rear spoiler there are basically acting like small parachutes, actually large parachutes, and they're slowing the car down. Or that's not the really right way of saying it, because they're doing a purpose. They are pushing the car lower to the ground, and they're serving a very good purpose for giving the extra stability. That stability, as I said, is not free, and it's pulling the car back, which makes the power system have to work harder to get the same speed. So how do I know this? Well, here we go. So if you look up here, again, go back to the top equation where power equals your current that you're pushing through your power system times your voltage. Now that's also equivalent to the drag force that the car is feeling times the velocity that you're traveling. Now these two terms right here, I haven't talked about this stuff before, but don't let it scare you. Basically, this term right here means your motor efficiency. So that's how well your motor converts electric power into propulsion. This term right here is looking at transmission losses. No transmission is 100% clean. All transmissions burn some energy just by the meshing of the gears, and that turns into heat, and that basically turns into a mechanical drag in your power system. And you can feel that, like when you take your car and you roll it back and forth, and you feel that drag, and you can hear that sound coming out of there. That's some of the transmission losses. So every power system, every car, you lose those things, and that's just the way the life works. So, interesting side note though. So the conversion efficiency of a good quality motor, like the Castle Creation 1410s that I run in both of these cars, is about 85%. So it says 85% of the electricity I put into the motor turns into force, propulsive force that moves the car down the road. Most transmissions, I honestly have not rigged up a good benchmark for how efficiently these cars put power to the ground. But in the automotive world, an automatic transmission, for example, typically is about anywhere from 80 to 90% efficient, depending upon manufacturer and things that they do internally. So for rough numbers, I just assume an 85% efficient motor, which I have the Castle, and then an 80% efficient transmission. So when you do the math right there, that says that only about 68% of the power that your power system creates turns into force that gets to the wheels to push your car to speed. Okay, so you're losing about a third of the electrical power from your system just pushing the car down the road. So just let that sink in for a second. So, a third of your energy is gone right off the top, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's not a lot. So in future videos, I'll talk about some things that you can do to your car to the mechanical system or the drive system to try to get some of that efficiency back. But that's a topic for later. So getting back to the math here. So your force, so this is the drag force that you're feeling. So F sub D, is equal to the drag that's on your body plus, in my case, the drag that's created by the spoilers. Now, you've seen this equation before. The aerodynamic drag that you feel on the body is equal to 1/2 rho, that's the density of air, times the square root of the velocity that you're traveling, times the coefficient of drag, which is a measure of how smoothly your car goes through the air, and the frontal area of the car. And this, I've done everything in watts, my calculation. So for the spoiler though, this is where, this is something new for you guys, because you actually have to calculate, the aerodynamic efficiency of the spoilers as a wing. So in the case of wings, when you talk about drag, so if you think about my pencil as being a wing going through the air, if I'm going through the air perfectly smoothly, there's no force going up or down. So I'm not getting any induced drag from the process of generating lift. But if I have an angle of attack, so if my wing gets tilted in this way, I'm lifting up. But if you see, the wing is kind of off at an angle. So I'm not just, when it lifts, it doesn't just lift straight up. It's going to be pushed a little bit backwards. That angle and the act of pushing up at that angle is called induced drag, because you're lifting a little bit of the lift that's going up is actually pushing the car or pushing yourself backwards. So using a little trigonometry, you can calculate that the induced drag of a wing is equal to the lift that the wing is generating times the sine of the angle. And, kind of breaking that, going further down to the equation. So the lift of a wing is equal to 1/2 rho v squared. So this is the same stuff up here. That's called the dynamic pressure of the air, times the area of the wing times the coefficient of lift, which is a measure of how efficiently that wing lifts or generates lift. The coefficient of lift, in turn, is a product of or the function of pi over 2 times the aspect ratio of the wing, and that's the relationship between the width of the wing and the surface area of the wing. So the aspect ratio is equal to the square of the wingspan divided by the area of the wing. So a longer, thinner wing creates lift more efficiently than a short, stubby wing, like this thing. All right, so after you put all this into a blender and you simplify the equation, you can calculate the lift of the spoiler as equal to pi over 4 times the density of air times the square root of the velocity that you're traveling, times the square of the wingspan, times the square of the angle of attack. Now, that angle of attack figure is a little deceptive, because if you look at this, the actual angle that the wing is hitting is not very great, but it has these little scoops that shoot air upwards. That effectively acts like you're tilting the wing further down. So that actually increases your effective angle of attack. So it's called wing camber, and I talked a little bit about that in my aerodynamics 101 video. So putting all that stuff together, I was able to update my spreadsheet here, my monster spreadsheet, to calculate the aerodynamic forces on the body and on the wing, so I can get a much better estimate of how much drag these cars were actually feeling at speed. All right, so I hope I didn't lose you guys. All right, so when you put everything into the blender, like I said, you start to calculate some numbers. You see that a Rustler, and I call this my case 1, my clean configuration. So a Rustler at 70 miles an hour clean only makes about 250 watts of drag off the body. When you throw in the mechanical losses on top of that, you're talking about roughly 60 watts. So your total load on your ESC is only about 350 watts. So that says that, a 70 amp power system, with a standard Rustler, that's not producing a whole lot of drag and everything, should be able to hit 70 miles an hour without much of without a huge challenge, if you can do everything that is necessary in order to keep the car on the ground. And as we know, getting a rustler up to 70 and keeping it on the ground is a lot harder than you would first think. So, after all that, you might say, well, what the heck does all that have to do with Slade? Well, if you go here and look at my case 2, this is what I'm calling 70 mile an hour dirty. And what I mean by dirty is high drag. If you look at Slade, again, with the spoilers, they're doing a good job. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but they are high drag. So, putting in all the math in my spreadsheet, calculating everything with the spoilers and what you're doing, you see that, the body is still the same in both cases. I mean, it's still the same body. When you add in the additional downforce and the induced drag created by that downforce, Slade's actually producing more drag from the spoilers than it is from the actual car body itself. So I've more than doubled the drag on the vehicle by adding the spoilers. I greatly increased the stability of the car, and I did it without having to add a bunch of extra mass. As you see, I'm still not running any weights. Well, I've got a couple little weights just kind of buried inside the spoiler just to get the CG at the position that I want it. That's the center of gravity, basically, so it balances with the weight over the wheels that I want. But overall, I'm not carrying any chassis plates. There's no exotic, lead plating or anything in here. It's a raw rustler, about 5.5 pounds loaded. And the fact that that car is able to stay on the road stably and be controlled at just under 70 miles an hour is pretty impressive in and of itself. And because it's very light, it accelerates up to that speed really quickly. The problem is that I run out of power and I can't push through. Now, what I mean by that is sit here and look at the math and see, given 250 watts of body drag plus 385 watts of spoiler drag, that gives me just aero drag of about 635 watts. Add on top of that mechanical losses of about 300 watts. So now I'm at a total ESC load of about 900 watts at 70 miles an hour. Now remember, like I said over here above, at 70 amp speed controller at roughly 12 volts, this ESC is rated for just about 850 watts. So 900 watts of aero load at 70, 800 watts of electrical power. What that says is that this car, with this configuration, should be able to get to just under 70 miles an hour before the ESCs run out of juice. And as I've confirmed in video after video and run after run, it runs out of juice at 68.x miles an hour. So on one hand, this is pretty exciting for me, because what that says is that the math works. I was able to go in and calculate from first principles, the power capacity of the ESC, how much drag I'm losing, or how much energy I'm losing through the powertrain, and the aerodynamic drag of the vehicle, and come up with numbers that, to the first order, are roughly equivalent. So I mean, that's, like I said, that's pretty exciting, because that shows that I'm able to model what's going on with the vehicle. The downside is, what that shows me is that with this power system, I can't get there from here. That ESC can't do it. But you look down underneath here, this says that if I upgrade to a higher capacity ESC, still running 3S, I'm able to almost double my power output. So going from 70 amps to 120 amps, I'm able to get nearly 1500 watts. So just about 2 horsepower out of the power system. So, okay. How you gonna do that? Got your sidewinders. I'm not gonna be able to magically increase the power capacity of a sidewinder. Well, no, I can't. But eBay is my friend. So if you look over here, I've been a busy bee. Let me just empty this out. So here I've got a whole heap of stuff. I mean, this right here, I should have bought this a long time ago, but this is a Castle Field programmer. This is going to be added to my Go box. Okay. And what else I got in here? You know, and that's going to give me away. But if you look inside of here, always trying to open up stuff one-handed. You will see. Ta-da! Now what do we have here? These are Mamba Monster 2 equivalents. Actually, they're the these are MXL6 speed controllers out of eRevos. So you see it's Traxxas blue on the bottom and Castle black on the top. What happened was I was browsing around eBay and I discovered there was a place in Missouri that appears to be an authorized retailer, basically selling bulk Castle hardware. And they had these ESCs, and they've been tested by the company. I haven't plugged up my, I haven't wired up my Dean's connectors yet, obviously. But they've been tested by the company and confirmed that they come up as Mamba Monster 2s, and they are functional. And these guys are beasts. And the best part of it is I picked these things up because they claim to be, though there's no stickers, obviously. They didn't have a fan, so I had to buy the fan separately. They said that they had some cosmetic damage, but damned if I could find it. But the sweetest thing about this is that all together with the fan, they were about 80 bucks each. You can barely buy a Sidewinder for 80 bucks. Okay, so that's a little bit less than 80 bucks, but you get the point. For something about, this is really, really, really heavily discounted. Now, there's a little risk involved because, I could have got a piece of junk, but the company seems to be pretty good. They seem to honor warranties if you get a dead part. But this is exciting because, like I said, going back to the math over here, by replacing my Sidewinder ESCs with these guys, I automatically nearly double my power output. And the cool thing about these guys is that these can do up to 6S. So just kind of looking at the math over here, so if I just kept this ESC in a position and I went up to 4S or up to 6S, I'd be able to go up to about 1900 watts output, or with 6S, that's about 3 kilowatts output. This is 4 horsepower, okay? That's a lot of juice. So I'm pretty excited about this. But bringing it back around to Slade. So, okay. So I take the ESCs, and let's just, for the heck of it, just look at the size difference between these things here. That when you say that these things are monsters, they're not kidding. And I don't know if I can really get the scale involved in here in the video, but let me just look at this thing. So I haven't done the mock-ups yet, but I believe I can just mount this in the stock location here and get everything together. And so right now the plan is to keep this guy running with the 3S, because I really want to see what I can do with this 1410 motor. You guys have seen everybody else's videos. People with 1410s are going well into the 80s and maybe even higher. So I no longer have a choke point at the ESC. So I think that this thing can do some really serious damage. So let's go over here with Dizzy. As you see, I have 2 speed controllers, so they're both getting upgrades. And a magical thing here, this is about the same physical size as my ginned up cooling system over here. So this will be a drop-in replacement. So this Dizzy on 3S, Slade on 3S. Okay, all's good, right? Maybe not, because you see there's still some more boxes over here. So, all right, but let me go ahead and jump into math or finish off the math before I start going on the other stuff, get off on a tangent. So looking back over here, so what does this mean for my next round of speed goals? Well, just picking an arbitrary number. So a clean rustler at 87 miles an hour. So that's a rustler with no aerodynamic treatment. And you see a lot of these guys out there. And like I said, you see some of the guys with the 1410 with larger ESCs going well into the 80s. So I just picked the number 87 miles an hour to sound good. I just did the math, and a clean body will make about just under 500 watts of power. Throw into that mechanical losses, and that puts you with an ESC load of about 700 watts. It's like 1 horsepower. So again, with a higher speed controller, that says that you still have plenty of excess power. And that aligns with what the guys were saying, when they say that, they're doing high speed runs and they're only putting in about half power or 2/3 power, because they're really not hitting a limit of what the power system can do. They're hitting a limit of what the car stability will let them do. So that becomes really important later. So for my case with Slade, picking 87 miles an hour again, at 87, the body is now producing the same 500 watts of drag. The spoilers, though, are now making about 750 watts of drag. So I'm losing a horsepower just from the spoilers. And by the way, I converted that into pounds of drag, and that's saying that it's actually feeling 4.3 pounds of drag force going through the air just from the spoilers. So it gives me a total aerodynamic drag about 1200 watts. That's almost 2 horsepower. Throw in that mechanical losses, and now you get a load of an ESC of about 1800 watts in order to go to 87 miles an hour. So what that tells me is that, again, going up here looking at a 3S system, no matter what I do with these high drag spoilers, I'm not going to get much more than in the low 80s actually, what the math comes up to. So what does that mean for Slade? Well, that says that in order to get him above 70, I need to pull some drag out of him. So you guys have already seen the video where I did the low drag spoiler, and that itself is a really, really significant thing, because that cuts down my spoiler drag by half. So if you look here, if I make this now 300 watts instead of 750 watts of drag, now I'm back into the 700 pound or 700 watts of drag area, and throw on that with the mechanical losses, and I'm down at more like a kilowatt, which is well within the power capacity of this. So that says that with the low drag spoilers and a little bit of tuning, Slade should be able to get up high 80s, maybe even into the 90s. And then if I replace this guy, or if I clean him up a little bit, and do some just overall aero tuning, you never know. This guy might actually be able to get to the triple digit club. But I have a lot of tuning and a lot of experimentation before I can try to make those claims. But it's promising. But again, it's we're talking about essentially going after a very high percentage of the total output of the 3S LiPo system. So when you go over and convert that over for Dizzy being a bigger car, heavier car with more drag, that says that if I want to get Dizzy into the triple digit club, with this 1410 motor and 3S, it's going to be even that much more hard, or that much harder. So there's really only one thing I can do to get him where I need to go, and that's to basically abandon the 1410 motor and do something a little bit different. So that's where I got this box over here, and this isn't a formal unboxing because I already opened it up, but buried down in here, what do we got? Oh my stars and garters, I think I have a new motor. And yeah, check it out. This, not even out of packaging yet, this is a Castle 1512, and no, you can't see, well, let's see if I can make this visible. Yeah, so you can, if you look very carefully, you can see 2650. So this is a 1512 2650 kV motor. Same company, and there's a story behind it, but I don't have time for that right now. So this guy is going over here in Dizzy and going to do some good work. So with any luck and a little bit of tuning, you know, when the weather gets better, you're going to see these guys in a completely different light. So I am excited. So, oh, and one other little thing. I see, I've been running Gen 8, but I see a lot of you guys doing big things with SMC. It's something I didn't realize. You know, I'm based out of Virginia. SMC is based out of Virginia. They're just right down the way. So I said, hey, might as well go ahead and get some Virginia love. So I've got an SMC pack, and I've got my Gen 8 Studios pack. So one of the other things I want to do is see how well do these guys stand up against, you know, what I've been running. You know, based upon the numbers that you guys have been putting down, you know, with the SMCs, I've got high hopes and high expectations. So let's just see what this is all do. So guys, I hope you like this. This was kind of long and it was kind of geeky. I geeked out, but you know, I hope you guys liked it, and you know, and I hope you can follow along with me here. So as always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know, you know, what you're feeling. Let me know what you think about the new hardware or the new projects. So, you know, I can hardly contain my excitement. So this is really going to be fun coming up. So just, yeah. As always, guys, remember the mantra: fly, fix, fly, break it, fix it, do it all over again. And with this new hardware, I'm probably going to do a lot of breaking and a lot of fixing. So, and a lot of doing it all over again. So my smile is going from ear to ear and probably wrapping around my head. So as always, you know, keep tuning in. I can't wait to hear, you know, what you guys think of this stuff. And, you know, just, you know, thanks for being a part of the movement. All right. So guys, check y'all later. Peace.